I never thought a simple message from a coworker would shatter my perfect life in Denver. One text, one photo, and suddenly everything I believed in turned to ashes. They say betrayal comes from those closest to you, but they never tell you how deep that betrayal can go. As I stand in my office at sunset, staring at evidence of a conspiracy that threatens not just my marriage, but my children's future, I must make an impossible choice: protect my family or expose the truth. Welcome to my descent into a world of corporate greed, calculated deception, and deadly threats. Everything started last Friday when I received a strange message from my colleague Mike. We've worked together at Johnson & Associates, a software development company in Denver, for the past 5 years, and he's always been straight with me. "David, we need to talk. It's about Sarah. Can you meet me at Rocky Mountain Coffee House after work? Around 6 p.m., the message read. My stomach instantly tied itself in knots. Sarah and I had been married for 8 years, and we had 2 beautiful kids, Emily, 7, and Lucas, 5. We met in college, fell in love, and everything seemed perfect. Well, at least until recently. I noticed some changes over the past few months. Sarah, who worked as a marketing manager at Rivers Media, had been staying late at the office more frequently. She'd always been career-driven, and I supported that, but something felt different. Our conversations had become shorter, more superficial. She spent more time on her phone, always turning the screen away when I walked by. I tried to convince myself it was just work stress. The coffee house was nearly empty when I arrived. Mike was already there, sitting in a corner booth, his usually cheerful face uncharacteristically serious. He didn't even wait for me to sit down completely before speaking. "Look, man, I don't know how to say this, but as your friend, I have to tell you," he began, his fingers nervously tapping on his coffee cup. "Yesterday, I was at the Meridian Hotel for a client meeting. I saw Sarah there. With someone. They were having lunch in the restaurant, but it didn't look like a business meeting." I felt the blood drain from my face. The Meridian was on the opposite side of town from her office. "What do you mean?" I managed to ask, though I already knew the answer. "They were holding hands across the table, David. And when they left, Mike paused, clearly uncomfortable. "They kissed. It wasn't a friendly goodbye kiss either. I'm sorry, man. I took a photo because I knew you'd need proof. I wouldn't believe it myself if I hadn't seen it." He slid his phone across the table. The picture was crystal clear: Sarah, in her favorite blue dress, kissing a tall man in an expensive suit. They were standing next to a black Mercedes in the hotel parking lot. My world started spinning. "Do you know who he is?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "That's Robert Maxwell. He's the CEO of Rivers Media," Mike replied. "Everyone in the industry knows him. He's been featured in Business Weekly multiple times." I sat there, staring at my untouched coffee, my mind racing through the past few months. The late nights, the new dresses, the decreased intimacy. It all made sense now. But what should I do? Confront her immediately? Gather more evidence? My thoughts were interrupted by Mike's voice. "There's more, David. And you're not going to like it." Mike pulled out an envelope from his laptop bag. "My wife Amanda works at Denver First Bank," he said, sliding it across the table. "She handles VIP accounts. Last week, she noticed something unusual about Sarah's transactions." I opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were bank statements showing regular deposits of $5,000 into Sarah's personal account, an account I didn't even know existed. The deposit started 3 months ago, all from the same source: Maxwell Industries, LLC. "That's Robert Maxwell's personal company," Mike explained. "Amanda showed me because she was worried. She knows we're friends, and she thought you should know." My mind was racing. Not only was Sarah cheating, but she was also taking money from this guy. This wasn't just an affair, it was something bigger, more calculated. The Sarah I knew would never take money from anyone. What had happened to the woman I married? "There's a pattern," Mike continued, his voice low. "The deposits always come the day after she has these late meetings at work. And David, there's something else." Amanda noticed several large purchases from high-end jewelry stores and a real estate agency. I felt sick to my stomach. Real estate? She put a down payment on a condo in Cherry Creek last week, the expensive part of town. Mike looked at me with concern. "David, I think she's planning to leave you." Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Working late again tonight, honey. Don't wait up." Love you. The casual lie made my blood boil. I checked my watch, 6:45 p.m. The Meridian Hotel was only 15 minutes away. I need to see it for myself, I said, standing up. Which room did you see them enter yesterday? Mike grabbed my arm. Whoa, slow down. You can't just storm in there. You need to be smart about this. Think about Emily and Lucas. He was right, of course. If Sarah was really taking money from Maxwell, I needed to protect myself and the kids. But the thought of them together in that hotel right now. Listen, Mike said, pulling out his phone. I have a friend who works IT security at the Meridian. He owes me a favor. Let me make a call. We can find out if they're there. Get proof that will hold up in court. But you have to promise me you won't do anything crazy. I nodded slowly, sinking back into my seat. My whole life was falling apart, but I had to keep it together. For the kids. Mike stepped outside to make his call. While waiting, I looked through the bank statements again. Each transaction told a story. Expensive restaurants, hotels, shopping sprees. She was living a completely different life behind my back. Mike returned 5 minutes later, his face grim. They're there. Room 827. My friend sent me the security footage from the lobby. They checked in 20 minutes ago. Send me everything, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. I'm calling Amanda Wilson. The divorce attorney? Mike asked, surprised. Yeah. And then I'm going home to pack Sarah's things. But first, I need you to help me with something else. Something that will make sure Robert Maxwell regrets the day he met my wife. Mike's eyes widened as I explained my plan. It wasn't just about catching them in the act. It was about exposing everything. You see, working in software development gives you certain advantages. Robert Maxwell's company is one of our clients at Johnson & Associates, I explained. We handle their cybersecurity. And guess who's been leading the project for the past year? Mike leaned forward. You're not thinking of? I'm not going to hack anything, I assured him. I'm just going to look at the data we already have access to. Legally. I pulled out my laptop and logged into our company's secure system. Maxwell's been embezzling money from his company. Those payments to Sarah? They're just the tip of the iceberg. As I scrolled through the financial records, a pattern emerged. Maxwell had been siphoning company funds through multiple shell corporations. The same shell corporations that were making deposits into Sarah's account. She's not just his mistress, I said, my voice tight. She's helping him launder money. That's why he made her head of marketing so quickly last year. Mike whistled low. This is bigger than we thought. But David, if you expose this, Sarah could go to jail. That's why we're going to give her one chance, I replied, pulling out my phone to call my sister Rachel. She's a detective with the Denver PD's Financial Crimes Unit. But before I could dial, my phone buzzed with a text from our neighbor, Carol. David, is everything okay? There's a moving truck outside your house. My heart stopped. I showed the message to Mike. No way, he said. She wouldn't. But she would. While we were tracking her affair and financial crimes, Sarah was already making her move. I jumped up, but Mike grabbed my arm again. Wait. Remember the plan. Let me call Amanda first. She can freeze that account right now. And I'm calling my IT friend at the Meridian. We need to know if they're still there. 10 minutes later, we had our answers. The account was frozen, but Sarah and Maxwell had already left the hotel. According to Carol's updates, 2 men were loading boxes into a truck while Sarah supervised. She's taking the kids, I realized with horror. That's when something in me snapped. All thoughts of careful planning evaporated. I raced to my car, Mike right behind me. As I sped toward home, he made rapid calls. One to Amanda Wilson, the divorce attorney, another to Rachel, and a third to someone I didn't expect. Janet Maxwell, Mike said grimly. Robert's wife. I got her private number from Amanda at the bank. She needs to know what's happening, and she might be able to help us. I gripped the steering wheel tighter as we turned onto my street. The moving truck was still there, its engine running. Sarah stood in the driveway, holding Emily and Lucas by their hands. They looked confused and scared. But Sarah's triumphant expression changed to shock when 3 cars pulled up right behind us. A police cruiser, an expensive SUV I didn't recognize, and a familiar Mercedes. Rachel stepped out of the police cruiser. From the SUV emerged an elegant woman in designer clothes, Janet Maxwell. And from the Mercedes, Robert Maxwell himself, apparently rushing to warn Sarah. The next few minutes would change everything. Time seemed to freeze in our suburban driveway. Emily clutched her teddy bear while Lucas hid behind Sarah's legs. The moving men stopped working as the police arrived. "Sarah, get in the truck," Maxwell shouted, but stopped when he saw his wife emerging from her SUV. "Hello, Robert," Janet Maxwell said coldly. "Surprised to see me? I thought you'd be interested to know I've learned about your special projects with the marketing department." Sarah's face went pale. "Robert, you said she was in Europe?" "He lied," Janet cut in. "Just like he lied about the company finances to the board. Would you like to know what else he's been lying about?" Rachel stepped forward, her badge visible. "Mr. Maxwell, we have some questions about certain transactions between your company and offshore accounts." I watched as Robert's confident facade crumbled. He reached for his phone, but Janet laughed softly. "Looking for your lawyer? They dropped you this morning. The board meeting tomorrow should be interesting." Sarah released the children's hands. "Emily, Lucas, go to Daddy," she said shakily. They ran to me immediately, and I held them close. "How did you find out?" Sarah asked. "Maybe don't use a company I provide cybersecurity for to launder your affair money," I replied. "And maybe don't trust a cheater to be faithful." Mike showed Sarah's phone. "Meet Jessica from accounting. Robert's been busy with her too. These are from last week." Sarah turned to Robert in rage, but he was already backing away. Janet's laugh cut through the air. "Oh, and Sarah? Robert isn't divorcing me. He can't. Our prenup gives me company control if he cheats. Which, as of this morning, I have." "Mrs. Winters," Rachel addressed Sarah, "we need you to come with us regarding the financial fraud investigation." "I'll call my lawyer," Sarah said, reaching for her phone. "Your accounts were frozen an hour ago," Mike interjected, "including the one with your lawyer's retainer." I stepped forward, still holding our children. "Your parents are coming for Emily and Lucas. I've filed for emergency custody, given the circumstances." As Rachel led Sarah to the police cruiser, she turned back. "David, I can explain." "Save it for the investigators," I replied. "The FBI already has copies of everything." After Carol took the kids for hot chocolate, I watched as both Sarah and Robert were driven away in separate police cars. Janet Maxwell approached me. "Mr. Winters," she said professionally, "we should discuss what you found in the company's security systems. Would you be interested in a new position? I'm making some changes at Rivers Media." The next morning was surreal. Sarah's parents, Tom and Martha, arrived early to help with the kids. I could see the pain and disappointment in their eyes. They'd always treated me like a son, and now their own daughter had betrayed us all. Emily wouldn't eat her breakfast, kept asking when Mommy was coming home. Lucas just sat there, pushing his cereal around the bowl, not saying a word. Martha tried to keep things normal, making pancakes in heart shapes like she always did when visiting, but the tension was palpable. "David," Tom pulled me aside while Martha was cleaning up. "We've known you for 10 years. Whatever you need, we're here. Sarah's our daughter. But what she did—" He paused, his voice cracking. "We raised her better than this." I was in my home office, reviewing emails from Janet Maxwell's legal team about the evidence I'd uncovered, when Mike called. "David, turn on the news. Now." I flipped open my laptop and pulled up the local news station. Robert Maxwell's face filled the screen. He'd been charged with embezzlement, money laundering, and tax evasion. Rivers Media's stock was in free fall. The news anchor was interviewing financial experts about the company's future when they cut to breaking news. "We have just received word that Janet Maxwell, wife of Rivers Media CEO Robert Maxwell, has been named as a co-conspirator in this massive financial fraud scheme. Sources close to the investigation suggest Mrs. Maxwell may have been the architect of the entire operation." Before I could process this, my phone rang again. This time it was Rachel. "Don't trust Janet," she said urgently. "We have evidence she orchestrated everything. Sarah and Robert were just pawns in her game. She needed someone to take the fall when our investigation got too close. She's been running this scheme for years." "But why Sarah?" I asked, trying to make sense of it all. "Because your wife was perfect, ambitious, vulnerable to flattery, and married to someone with access to the company's security systems. Janet needed someone who could convince Robert to be careless, someone who could be easily manipulated." The doorbell rang. 2 FBI agents stood on my porch, badges ready. Agent Thompson and Agent Martinez introduced themselves and spent the next 2 hours going through every detail of how I discovered the fraud through our company's security systems. They were particularly interested in my recent communications with Janet Maxwell. Mr. Winters, Agent Thompson said as they were wrapping up, we believe you stumbled onto something much bigger than corporate fraud. We're talking about international money laundering operations worth hundreds of millions. Just as they were leaving, my phone buzzed. An email from an anonymous address appeared. Think about your children before you help the FBI. Attached was a photo of Emily and Lucas at their school playground, clearly taken earlier that day. My daughter was wearing the pink dress she'd put on this morning, while Lucas was in his favorite superhero t-shirt. My hands started shaking. I thought exposing Sarah's affair would end this nightmare, but I'd stumbled into something much bigger. Now someone was threatening my children, and I had no idea how deep this conspiracy went. I called Mike immediately. I need help, I said, my voice tight. They're watching my kids. I'm already on it, he replied. Stay put. Rachel's arranging police protection, and I'm calling in some favors from my security firm contacts. We're not letting Janet Maxwell anywhere near your family. I walked to the kitchen window, watching Emily and Lucas playing in the backyard with their grandparents. They looked so innocent, so unaware of the storm surrounding them. I made a silent promise. No matter what it took, I would protect them from Janet Maxwell's schemes, even if it meant fighting one of the most powerful women in Denver. That evening, after putting the kids to bed, I sat down with Rachel and Mike in my living room to plan our next move. Tom and Martha had gone to a hotel nearby, giving us space to talk freely. I've arranged for police patrols around your house and the kids' school, Rachel said, spreading out some papers on the coffee table. But Janet Maxwell has connections in high places. We need to be smarter than just brute force protection. Mike nodded, typing something on his laptop. I've been doing some digging. Janet's been making moves we didn't see before. She's liquidated several accounts, transferred properties. She's preparing for something big. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Check your email. You have 1 hour to respond. The email contained a video, security footage from Rivers Media, showing Sarah in Janet's office 6 months ago. The audio was crystal clear. Janet was threatening Sarah with something, and my wife was crying. The timestamp matched exactly when Sarah's behavior started to change. This changes things, Rachel said, watching the video. If we can prove coercion. Before she could finish, my doorbell rang. Through the security camera, I saw the last person I expected, Robert Maxwell's daughter, Amanda. She was a senior executive at a competing media company and had famously cut ties with her father years ago. I know what my stepmother did, she said after we let her in. She did the same thing to my real mother 15 years ago. Used affairs, blackmail, everything. I've been gathering evidence against her for years. Mike looked skeptical. Why come forward now? Because she's not just after money anymore, Amanda replied, pulling out a USB drive. This is her endgame. She's been positioning Rivers Media for a hostile takeover by Summit Communications. If it goes through, thousands will lose their jobs. My father and Sarah were just distractions from her real plan. I thought about the families I knew at Rivers Media. Good people who had nothing to do with any of this. Then I thought about Emily and Lucas, and how their college funds were tied up in this mess. What's on the drive? I asked. Everything. Account numbers, recordings, emails. Enough to stop Janet and Summit Communications. But we have to move fast. The takeover vote is in 3 days. Rachel examined the drive. This could help our investigation, but using it might expose all of us to retaliation. I already have a target on my back, I said, thinking of the playground photos. At least this way we're fighting back. Mike closed his laptop. If we do this, we need to be smart. Janet has eyes everywhere. One wrong move, and another text buzzed on my phone. Time's running out, David. The playground was just a warning. Make the right choice. I looked at the 3 people in my living room. My sister, my best friend, and the daughter of the man who helped destroy my marriage. Strange allies in an even stranger war. Let's end this, I said. Tell me what you need me to do. The next morning started with another threat. This time, Janet didn't bother hiding. She called me directly. I'm impressed by your new alliance, she said smoothly. Amanda always was a troublemaker. Like her mother. Did she tell you what happened to her mother after crossing me? I stayed silent, recording the call as Rachel had instructed. I can be generous, David. Walk away now. I'll make sure Sarah gets a reduced sentence. Your children's college funds will triple. All you have to do is delete everything you found. And if I don't, Then you'll lose everything. Not just money. Everything. The line went dead. We put our plan in motion immediately. Amanda arranged an emergency board meeting at Rivers Media, claiming to have proof of illegal activities. I provided cybersecurity consulting, which gave me legitimate access to the building. Mike set up surveillance from a van across the street, monitoring all communications. Rachel had her financial crimes unit ready to move. But first, we needed Janet to incriminate herself. I walked into Rivers Media's headquarters, nodding to the security guard I'd known for years. In my briefcase was Amanda's USB drive, loaded with everything we had on Janet. But it also contained something else. A program designed to let us access Janet's private server. "Mr. Winters," Janet's assistant greeted me. "Mrs. Maxwell is expecting you." Janet's office was on the top floor, with a view of the Denver skyline. She sat behind her massive desk, looking every bit the powerful executive. "I knew you'd make the right choice," she smiled. "Let's talk about your future." "Actually," I pulled out my laptop, "let's talk about Sarah's first meeting with you. The one where you threatened to expose her childhood secret unless she helped you." Janet's smile flickered. "I don't know what you mean. The security cameras in your office. They record audio too. Did you forget I designed the system?" Her phone buzzed. A text from her contact at Summit Communications. "FBI at our office. Deal suspended." I watched her face change as she realized her empire was crumbling. But then she smiled again. "Check your phone, David." A new message appeared, a live video feed from my house. Someone was inside, moving towards the kids' rooms. "Your security is good," Janet said softly. "But mine is better." My heart stopped as I watched the figure move through my house on the video feed. But then I noticed something, a familiar reflection in the hallway mirror. I kept my face neutral, looking back at Janet. "You're right. Your security is better," I said calmly. "But did you really think I'd leave my children unprotected?" Her smile faltered as another figure appeared on the video feed. Rachel, weapon drawn. The intruder was quickly surrounded by her tactical team. They'd been waiting inside the house all along. "You see, Janet, while you were watching my kids at school yesterday, we were setting up our own surveillance. Those college funds you threatened? We've already traced them to your private accounts in the Cayman Islands." Janet reached for her phone, but I continued. "Summit Communications isn't returning your calls because their board just received proof of your involvement in stock manipulation. Amanda's been working with their CEO for months." "Amateur moves," Janet sneered, pressing a button under her desk. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." The office door opened, but instead of her security team, Mike walked in with 2 FBI agents. "Actually, we do. Remember that security system I designed? It records everything, including every phone call you've made from this office." Janet's facade finally cracked. "Those recordings are inadmissible. Corporate privilege. Doesn't cover criminal conspiracy," Agent Thompson finished, entering the office. "We've been building this case for a year. David and Amanda just helped us complete it." As the agents read Janet her rights, my phone buzzed again. A message from Tom. "Kids are safe. Taking them for ice cream with their favorite aunt." Rachel had texted too. "Intruder in custody." You'll never guess who it was. Later that evening, I learned the truth. The intruder was Sarah's lawyer, desperate to recover documents he claimed she'd hidden in the house. He'd been working with Janet the whole time, helping to orchestrate the original affair and subsequent cover-up. He folded immediately, Rachel told me at the station. Gave us everything on Janet's operation. Sarah wasn't her first victim. She'd been running this scheme for years, using affairs and blackmail to manipulate company takeovers. I watched through the one-way glass as Janet sat in the interrogation room, her designer suit wrinkled, her perfect composure shattered. She looked up suddenly, as if sensing my presence, and smiled. "This isn't over," she mouthed silently. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I knew she was wrong. It was over, at least this chapter of it. The kids were safe, the truth was out, and Janet's empire was crumbling. Now I just had to figure out how to help my children heal from all of this. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and media coverage. Rivers Media's stock had stabilized under new leadership, with Amanda surprisingly being named interim CEO. The board had been impressed by her role in exposing the corruption. Sarah reached out through her new lawyer, requesting to see the kids. She'd accepted a plea deal in exchange for testifying against Janet and Robert. 5 years probation, no jail time, but she'd have to pay back everything she'd received from the scheme. I think you should let her see them, Martha said during one of her visits. Not for her sake, but for Emily and Lucas. They need to understand that their mother still loves them, even if she made terrible mistakes. I agreed to a supervised visit at a family counseling center. Watching Emily run to hug her mother, while Lucas hung back uncertainly, was one of the hardest things I'd ever experienced. I'm so sorry, Sarah said afterward, tears streaming down her face. Janet threatened to expose something from my past, something I've never told anyone. But that's no excuse. I should have trusted you, should have fought back. What did she have on you? I asked, curiosity finally getting the better of me. A sealed juvenile record. I did something stupid as a teenager. My parents don't even know. Janet somehow found out and used it to control me. But I still made my own choices. Terrible choices that hurt our family. Robert Maxwell received 15 years in federal prison. His cooperation had been too little, too late. Janet's trial was still pending, but with the evidence mounting, her lawyers were scrambling for a deal. Mike had been promoted at work for his role in uncovering the fraud. Rachel's unit received commendations from the FBI. But the real hero was Amanda, who'd spent years gathering evidence against her stepmother, waiting for the right moment to strike. I watched her destroy my family, Amanda told me over coffee. She did the same thing to 3 other companies before Rivers Media. The affairs, the blackmail, the takeovers, it was all part of her playbook. I'm just glad we stopped her before she could hurt more people. The kids were in therapy, slowly processing everything that had happened. Emily still had nightmares sometimes, and Lucas was only just starting to open up again. But they were resilient, stronger than I'd ever imagined. As I tucked them into bed that night, Emily asked the question I'd been dreading. Daddy, is Mommy a bad person? Looking into my daughter's innocent eyes, I realized that healing would be a long journey, but we'd take it together, one day at a time. 6 months had passed since Janet's empire crumbled. I sat in my new office at Rivers Media, looking out at the Denver skyline. Amanda had offered me the position of chief security officer, and after much consideration, I'd accepted. The company needed rebuilding from the ground up, with transparency and integrity at its core. Janet's trial had ended with a 20-year sentence for fraud, money laundering, and criminal conspiracy. Her final attempt to threaten the judge with supposed blackmail material had only added years to her sentence. Robert Maxwell was serving his time in a minimum security prison, writing what he claimed would be a tell-all book that nobody wanted to publish. Sarah had stuck to her plea deal, attending mandatory counseling and making regular restitution payments. Our divorce was finalized, but we'd reached a careful arrangement regarding the children. She saw them twice a week under supervised visits, which had recently been going well. Lucas had finally started talking to her again, and Emily's nightmares had become less frequent. Martha and Tom still picked the kids up from school 3 days a week. They've been rocks throughout everything, showing that family isn't always about blood ties. They'd even supported Sarah's efforts to make amends, understanding that their grandchildren needed both parents in their lives. Emily bounded into my office one afternoon, waving a paper. Daddy, I got an A on my story. She'd written about heroes and villains, based on her own understanding of what had happened. The school counselor said it was a healthy way for her to process events. Lucas followed more slowly, clutching his tablet. I beat level 12, he said quietly. His therapist had recommended certain games to help him work through his trust issues. Watching him slowly come out of his shell was like witnessing a flower bloom in slow motion. Mike and Rachel joined us for dinner that evening, as they often did now. Our shared experience had turned friendship into family. Mike had met someone new at work and was nervously planning to propose. Rachel had been promoted to lead her own task force, focusing on corporate fraud cases. Amanda called, Mike mentioned over dessert. The Summit Communications merger is officially dead, and Rivers Media's stock hit a new high today. Your security overhaul is making investors feel confident again. Later that night, after everyone had left and the kids were in bed, I found Emily's story on the kitchen counter. She'd drawn our family, not as we were before, but as we were now. Sarah was in the picture, but standing slightly apart. There were also drawings of Mike, Rachel, Tom, and Martha. At the bottom, she'd written, My family is different now, but it's bigger and stronger. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Emily showed me her story today. You've done an amazing job with them. I know I can never fix what I broke, but thank you for letting me try to be part of their lives again. The college funds were secure now, thanks to the settlement from Rivers Media and Janet's seized assets. It wasn't just about the money, though. It was about turning a nightmare into something positive for their future. As I walked through the quiet house doing my nightly security check, I paused at the kids' rooms. Emily was cuddling her favorite teddy bear, while Lucas had fallen asleep reading his comics. They were healing. We all were. The past year had taught me that life rarely goes as planned. Sometimes people you trust betray you, and sometimes strangers become family. What matters is not the crisis itself, but how you choose to move forward from it. The story wasn't over. It never really is when you have children, but this chapter was ending on our own terms. And for now, that was enough.